Hey there, Potato here. Hope you're all doing well. Another topic that we wanted to cover on Bacon and Potato Gaming is VRS and what that means to new players specifically. I'm hovering here over Sakumi at about 300 meters in an MI8, and I want to discuss with you what we struggled with, Bacon and I, when discovering what VRS was and how we developed our skills to combat this unfortunate act and aerodynamic problem in flying helicopters while we fly around in DCS multiplayer, specifically on the Rotor Heads multiplayer and online server. So first you might be asking yourself, what is VRS? And I'm truly not the best person to explain to you in great visual detail the aerodynamic forces that are happening on the tips of your rotor blade and the root of your rotor blade. And for those of you that don't know, the root of your rotor blade is the section of rotor blade that's about the first 1/4 of your rotor blade stemming from the power shaft. So just to make a long story short, I would really recommend that you visit a VRS video, and in fact I will link a visual representation done by an aerobatics company down in the description, as well as a video that I came across where someone described what VRS was and its aerodynamic forces on the vortices for the rotor blades very well. And I feel like that will give you the best representation for what's going on. So now that you understand what VRS is and the difference between settling with power and full VRS itself is, I'm going to show you an example of what it's like to VRS when landing. Typically, the novice helicopter pilot in DCS will experience this a lot, especially in their first time in the aircraft playing in a stressful situation. I know that Bacon and I definitely felt this stress, VRS, and not understanding what we can do to fix it, and it happening just a lot. And honestly, again, the best tip for this is understanding aerodynamically what's going on and practicing good behaviors and good approaches in single player so you can apply that to your online use. I'm looking around here just to make sure we're clear of traffic. I'm going to do a little reverse bump here. We're going to land on the airfield here, and I'm going to show you an example of what VRSing while landing looks like. I'm going to try and approach the landing space with some speed. I'm going to dump the collective, try and center it out. Buffeting occurs. I'm pulling, and that's a VRS. So when the buffeting occurs, that is the effect of settling with power. Whereas you can see the root of the aircraft here, the root of the blades here is all bent up in the middle. That's when the aerodynamic forces of the downward wind pressure start to overcome the lift that the rotor blades themselves are providing. Again, if you watch those videos I linked in the description, you should see a really good visual example aerodynamically of what's going on. One of the things that I want to go over is your approach to the landing zone. It's okay to go low. If you're not slinging something, you are in a combat zone, typically you're getting shot at. Specifically on the Rotorhead server, there's a lot of AAA, there's a lot of tanks that'll fire at you, BTR, MTLB, like anything with a machine gun will shoot at you really, really hard. And helicopters are a little more sensitive than an A-10 is, or a Su-25, or even something like a Harrier is pretty beefy. And it's just harder to hit. Helicopters are slower, and they're bigger, and they're a more vulnerable target. Because of that, you have to take some extra steps, but it's okay for you to get low. Another thing that I want to talk about is taking your time slowing down. In ground effect, I want you to start to pitch up your aircraft and lower the collective. Now, if you need to see my controls, again, upper left-hand corner, you show that quadrant. Even in an example like this, where, let's say I want to actually land on this little taxiway here, or, on this little taxiway here, as it approaches the runway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the ground effect as a sort of cushion to judge when I need to start my anti-torque maneuver. And this sort of play on the pedal and on the collective and on the cyclic, kind of moving it back and preemptively moving it back forward while pulling the power and increasing the torque on your rudder pedals, that's a little dance that you need to get used to. It's a trifecta. Now again, the more power that you pull, the more collective, again, that you're going to have to compensate for that, either left or right on the torque, and the more rudder that you're going to have to input. I'm out of translational lift, I'm in flying my helicopter, still in ground effect. I'm going to start to slow down again, the same situation. Slowing down, dropping my collective, and the moment I hit translational lift, the moment that aerodynamic forces start to pick up again, I'm going to have to increase my power and start to increase the torque of my pedals. Increase the power too quickly, you start to go up. To combat that in a Russian helicopter, when you go up, and I mean Russian helicopter, I mean anything really long bladed, when you start to increase your height to compensate for your collective, what you can actually do is point the cyclic downward, or I mean forward. You can point the nose down, and that will help reduce the buffeting. I'm going to show an example here again of out of translational lift, in ground effect, back into translational lift. And the moment you feel this buffeting, what you're going to do is you're going to increase the collective and point the cyclic forward. Point the cyclic forward. That will help the buffeting. It'll help you level out the power and redistribute the aerodynamic forces across the whole of the rotor blade evenly. Right? You want to get rid of the speed of which you're falling. What you're really focusing on here is this descent rate. You notice this whole time I haven't gone below 5 meters. 5 meters a second. That's really, really important. Yeah, so these are our practical tips to landing. One last thing, the reason why you want to undo your parking brake is in the event that you're going horizontally in speed or you're still going forward or backward in speed, if you have your brakes on, rollovers can happen, and that's actually a common occurrence in real life. And that's the practice, at least that I've read in a couple of other foreign Army manuals translated for the Mi-8, specifically in the Mi-24, is not to have the brake on while you're landing, but to kind of like pump it the moment that you do land so you don't roll forward. I don't know. Just my little tip there. To put all of these tips together, I'm going to approach a landing zone how I typically would in an online scenario or a multiplayer scenario with my Mi-8 TV2. I want to land on this bridge that's here to my 3 o'clock. I just passed the river which that bridge sits on. I'm actually going to go into a right-hand orbit here. I'm going to zero out my trimmer. I'm just going to talk through the things that I'm doing. I'm thinking I'm really high. These trees present a danger to me, so I want to approach from an area that's clear. Notice that this is the clear area that's coming into my vision, so I'm going to begin my approach here. I'm pre-trimmed out right now. I just did my little trim, pointing the nose towards where I want the helicopter to go, watching now my power, watching now for any indications if there's wind. Buffeting is starting to occur, so I'm really cautious about my VRS right now. I am anti-torquing, pulling power. Notice how I pulled power the moment I saw the torque go downward, the moment I saw that the helicopter started to decrease in elevation. So now here I am just zeroing out my thing. If I had troops on the, what's it called? On the ramp, they could be able to hop out now. If I just touch it down here, if the civ traffic doesn't kill me. Yeah, I hit my wheel. And yeah, and brake. That is an example of how I would land at a specific objective or target. Now again, one of the things you can do to really slow down and approach this correctly is to side slip. It's okay to side slip in this thing. This thing is really, really good, at least the Russian helicopter. The longer your blades are, the easier it is. It's just because it's a little bit less maneuverable on the side to side, so it's less twitchy. It's less, I don't know, what's darty, I guess is the right word, like in a car. Very, very similar to how a car feels darty. Same thing. I don't want to be going backward too far in this thing. But yeah. Thank you for watching our video on what VRS is, how you, as a typical DCS helicopter pilot, can encounter VRS, and tips and tricks to survive the trade while landing. If I were to create again a top takeaway from this video, it would be to simply practice. Practicing in your spare time can help you avoid disastrous, potentially wasteful mistakes in your multiplayer DCS career. If you are looking for a server to play multiplayer helicopters on, again, for a more passive experience, I recommend a Through the Inferno server, such as the Through the Inferno Syria, which has the island of Cyprus at the current time of this recording, as its destination for the helicopter playground. And if you're looking for an online interactive multiplayer server that you can incorporate items like SRS and radio communication to your online gameplay, with a community surrounded behind it, I strongly recommend looking into Rotorheads. Their community is just really good, and again, they inspire so much of the content for this channel. Nathan and I really appreciate the support with our shorts, and will continue posting them throughout the release of the DCS Apache. If you have any suggestions, comments, questions, things that you want maybe seen, shown, or highlighted on the channel, feel free to comment in the section below. Back to practice, one last thing. If you're looking for a real nice challenge, especially in the MI8, this is a really good one. This is the Burj Al Arab, the Parisa Hotel in Dubai, and it's landing on the helipad, tennis court helipad. At the top of it is actually very difficult. It requires you to concentrate a lot on the difference between settling with power and VRS, and how to settle with power and recover from it instead of VRSing entirely. And if you're able to touch down on this pad over here on the first try, really at a smooth approach, I think that you'll be set for any complex landing in DCS multiplayer that you could possibly incur. The reason I say that is this has got all of the hardest things kind of combined in it. This has got a windy platform that's not surrounded by any sort of ground effect scenario. And on top of that, the only thing you're missing is it's cold, and it's not cold and you're not that heavy, but this is a really good practice for preparing you for multiplayer and successful landings in the future. Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed. I know that the guests here at the Burj Al Arab will be enjoying whichever cargo that I brought to them, and yeah. Well, with all that said, I hope you all have a super wonderful day.
Отказал второй генератор. Отказал первый генератор.